I am so blessed every single day. I wake up and know how lucky I am. Is it all about chiropractic? Maybe. But I can tell you that what I'm going to share with you today is purely a heart-to-heart conversation. Because somehow I wound up in this world of malpractice insurance, but I spend my days really coaching doctors on the telephone when they're peeing in their pants because something went wrong in their practice, and what to do to try and get out of that situation or minimize the so-called damage of it. And I actually love doing that, and I love helping the doctors. But, you know, what I come to learn is that the doctors need help, a lot of them. And they need help, which is why I started getting out there and doing some risk management talks and things of that nature, which does not thrill me whatsoever. But one night, it just occurred to me, I'm a very, very, very private individual. I don't tell people about my business unless it's a close friend or family member and they happen to ask. I don't tell people a lot about me on a personal level. And I realized that I have had such an extraordinary life due to this profession. You heard a couple of miracle stories before, and I'm going to share some with you too. But it's kind of ironic that I deal with malpractice because when I was 13 years old, I was in school playing soccer. I knew I wouldn't be playing basketball. And I actually took the last shot of the game and fell down. And I displaced the femur head, and I went, I don't know how, but I'm so thankful for so many people, including in this room, you know, Dr. Rossi, a mentor to hopefully every one of you, certainly to me, Dr. Riekman, the first seminar I ever went to on my way to come down to Life College, the Claps, John Hoffman, who's not here, but him, Jim Gregg, Ian Grossum, so many wonderful, talented individuals that just touched my life. But none like my mother. And my mother, when this happened, sought out a chiropractor in New York, since my family has always gone to chiropractors. And she took me to this chiropractor, and at that time, we went down the 3 steps into this sort of kind of basement area of his house, and it was sort of like actually an office, and he started to adjust me. But my hip kept getting worse, and eventually my mother said, I better make an appointment with the orthopedist, since at this point I can hardly walk. The orthopedist, probably because I had been to a chiropractor, said, he can't leave here. We need to take him by ambulance to the hospital. And there's only about maybe 5 or 10 people on this planet that know these things about me. And we wound up going to the hospital. When he told me, I'm not real good at these things, so it was the first time I actually experienced sniffing something. It was smelling salts because I was about to pass out. And they get me to the hospital, and they wind up doing surgery on my hip. So that's a great way to be 13 years old. And now, if it was today, in today's environment, I'd probably be rich as hell because we would have sued the chiropractor. That's what most people do now on their way home from the chiropractor. They stop at an attorney like it's Walmart. But we didn't do that. And truthfully, we wouldn't do it today. What I do fault the doctor for is for not recognizing that things weren't going in the right direction, not ever taking an x-ray, which is why when I was in active practice, I didn't take patients unless we had x-rays. And if you didn't like it, there's other people to go and see. I had a very, very straightforward approach to dealing with people, and it was simply my way. And it worked for me, because you heard a lot of people this afternoon get up here and talk about different personalities, different attitudes, and I always believed in being who I am. Anybody in here that knows me knows what you see is what you get. And that's how I lived my life. But it didn't deter me. What actually happened was I got to 18 years old, and I worked in the Catskill Mountains. I know, it's one of those things. But as a teenager, I made a lot of money legally, and well, those of you that are laughing know what I mean, because you didn't do it that way. But I worked in the Catskill Mountains, and so did my brother for a little while, and a cousin of mine, and good friend. And we decided, my cousin and myself, we were going to take a trip. We decided that I hated school. So therefore, we're done. We were going to the good life. Where is the good life? California. So we set out on this whole journey in our head. What are we going to do? Well, the only thing we know is serving food, and it's worked pretty damn good. So we made contacts. We had jobs all lined up for us out in California. And we have a problem. How are we getting 2 cars out to California? So we decided that what we would do is take a month, month and a half, whatever it took to get out to California. First stop, Michigan, Lansing, Michigan, to drop off 1 car to one of my brothers. And then we would continue on our way out to California. There was only one problem. We got excited about going. And when we got excited, we were leaving from his house, but we couldn't sleep too well. So at about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't 3:30 or 4 then. It was about midnight, we decided to leave. Everyone else is asleep. We figured, why not just get going? We want to get there. So we left. We're driving 2 cars, a Datsun, for those of you old enough to ever heard of one, and a Fiat, which you wouldn't have heard of either until they came back out with new cars again. But in those days, you didn't have Sirius radio. You didn't have, well, you may have had 8-track tapes or something like that. If you were really cool, you had a cassette. But we weren't that cool. So we actually decided, as we're driving, we'll take a break for a minute and we'll switch cars just to break it up. And this way I can hear some stuff that's going on in his car, he can hear mine. So here I am driving this Fiat. And we're in Snowshoe, Pennsylvania. Anyone ever hear of that? Amazing. I never heard of it. And it's this little rinky-dink sign on the road with nothing there, except for a cement wall down a ditch off the highway. I found that wall, and I kissed it. I'm here because my cousin saw the lights go down since he was in front of me and thought he was hallucinating, but no one ever showed up, so he came and started looking and found me down that ditch. So there's no cell phones. This is 1976. I was 8 years old. And he didn't know what to do. There's no one around, no phones, nothing available. So he got up on the highway and waited for a trucker and waved him down. They got an ambulance. They got me to a hospital. he called his sister because he was afraid to call my mother. And his sister eventually called my mother. They drove out to Pennsylvania from New York with my brother Bob. Some of you may know him. And I do remember getting in the ambulance, by the way, because if you've ever heard anyone curse, to this day I wish I knew who those people were that I can go apologize to. But they got me to this little rinky-dink hospital in Snowshoe, Pennsylvania, who couldn't handle a trauma situation like that, but they couldn't move me being semi-comatose and having a high temperature. So here comes my brother in, I don't know, 9th trimester in New York Chiropractic College, maybe 10th. And thank God he was stupid enough to come in there and not care that I was hooked up to all these machines and they didn't know if I was going to make it or not make it. And he took me and adjusted me. 3 hours later, all of my vital signs were normal, and they transferred me. Now, it was no picnic from there. I don't run around and, 2 broken legs, the steering wheel cuts your chin because it came that close, things like that. But I am blessed. I'm blessed to have a brother that had the balls to just go with what came naturally to him and make sure I was going to be here today. And that's all about chiropractic. It was after that I came down to visit my other brother, Steve, at Life, after he first started school, and another guy that may have had a little influence on my life, maybe more than almost anybody, a guy named Dr. Klum. He actually adjusted me, this hyperactive little Jewish boy from New York, and in the middle of the afternoon I fell asleep. And when I woke up, he called me back into his office. I can still picture his red Zenith table. And he said, "So what are you doing?" "Well, I'm just hanging right now, "Well, why aren't you becoming a chiropractor?" Well, I don't need to give you the whole story of how he lectured me, but it was shortly after that that I wound up at Life College. And I am so thankful for Life University. I'm so thankful for the administration here. I'm so thankful for all of you being here. I want you to feel from my heart to your heart how blessed I am, and I hope that you feel blessed as well. I went into school this morning. I spoke at school yesterday. Let me tell you something that really friggin' pissed me off. I spoke to this great class yesterday afternoon. And at the end of the class, because I'm talking about risk management and malpractice insurance and all of these things, one of the students who asked a lot of really good questions raised her hand and asked me, "Well, is your insurance going to adapt to the changing times with prescription drugs like in New Mexico?" And I asked her 2 questions in return. Are you going to New Mexico? Yes. Are you planning on prescribing drugs? Yes. Then you'll want to call NCMIC because we're not doing that. And that's... Now here's the problem. We have unbelievable leadership in this university. And someone like that is ready to graduate. It happens. But what about every other school out there that doesn't have what we have here in Marietta? Who's going to take up that and keep chiropractic what saved my life and so many of yours? Because the reason I wanted to share a little bit of me that none of you have ever heard is because I wanted to make sure that it touches you in a way to remember that every time you go into an adjusting room, whether you're a student, a doctor, 1 year, 10 years, or 100 years, I don't want you to ever, ever, ever forget the power that's been given to us. One of the things I talked to Stephanie Sullivan about this morning, which was awesome, the research that's being done at Life is incredible. I wish you all could be part of it, know about it, and quite frankly, donate to it. But she's talking about actually measuring the impact of the relationship, the energy relationship between doctor and patient and healing, which is awesome because we used to talk about Grostic practitioners that never touched the skin, but the patient got well, and that's unbelievably great. The world needs what we have. I needed what we have. I had been to chiropractors way before I was 12, 13 years old, but I didn't know why I was there. When I was 13, I sure as hell wondered what the hell I ever did to be there. And at 18, I knew my life was dedicated to being part of this profession. And no matter what I do, and I've done a lot of different things in chiropractic, from just working every day, taking care of patients, to opening a lot of clinics, to shifting over to mind-body stuff for doctors, to opening up and running and creating a massive malpractice insurance company. All of these things are still aligned for me because I treat it as if it were my practice. Every time I talk to a doctor, they are my patient. And I had a patient, I had a doctor, I have a lot of doctors that I wind up reeling in off the edge. But for me, there is nothing more important than being a chiropractor. It is my life. It always has been. Tom Clapp has always been there, and I've been there with him most of the time. And it's about showing up. It's about doing. It's about serving, giving, loving everybody that you come in contact with your own personality, rather than trying to be somebody else. Emulating other people is great, but when it comes to the heart, it's really all about who you are. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit with you, and I hope you will take it serious enough to make a difference in other people's lives just by being there with and for them. Thank you.